Mm. Yeah.
Perfect. Welcome everyone to F10. Great to see so many people showing up in person. Seems it really works again that people leave their houses and their private home working situations. Love to see that. Great to have everyone here. Thanks for making the journey and joining us to also obviously on the online channel from hopefully a cozy home office all over the world. Great to have you. My name is Marc Hauser. I'm the head of F10 in Europe, and I have the pleasure today to give you a short introduction about F10. Then I will hand over to Martin, our Marc, which I will introduce, and Carla, and all of us will then do a small panel. And the idea is really you have also the possibility to ask your questions, everything around asset tokenization, where can it lead, what can it be, all your questions, concerns, or ideas. Also, I think happy to take them. For the introduction of F10, I mean, I mentioned that. Hit me up on LinkedIn. Follow if you like to see more of fintech relevant content. More and more also going into Web3 areas. So that's that area. Then Carla and Martin will be our guests today, as already mentioned. Carla is CEO of Core Technologies and will also obviously tell a little bit more about what she's doing here. And Martin is from SDX and seems, is that a fake board hate, it seems, holder, but SDX obviously also here in the building on the other side and standing for Swiss Digital Exchange and doing a lot on the tokenization and space on Core, our free technology. We'll dive into that in a second, I'm sure. So maybe before we go into the topic of today about F10, our mission is really to be the space where startups, corporate partners and investors come together and hopefully together create something new, create innovation for the financial services industry. These are the mentioned stakeholders. We are currently with a presence in next to Switzerland in Spain, Singapore, and expanding into the Nordics with currently a program that we will start across the Nordics focusing on climate meets fintech later this year. We have the luxury and privilege to work with many leading corporate partners across the globe. Obviously, SDX also there, with Six there, but also other players like Eligibility or R3, and if it comes to blockchain, also with Clayton, where we work in Singapore. So far, we have over 300 companies that went through our programs with aggregated 280 million in terms of funding rates. History, very briefly, we started in 2015, so 7 years ago, internally of Six, and gradually went more into independence and into a business model that is also for profit. First going into an association, and then earlier this year still. So already thinking 2023. I think many of you are already thinking ahead. But exactly this year, basically we did management buyout as well as an investment round with external investors, 5T FinTech even, Simples, OnPoint, and other investors who are now supporting our globalization and making sure we are really becoming globally relevant in terms of FinTech and investing in that area. Perfect. Then just to share a few logos of companies that went through our programs, but also to show you the different focus points that we have. Very much everything from payment, lending, saving, wealth management, of course, insurance, and also platform businesses, but also supporting operational startups. For example, we have Enterprise Bot here, who is a chatbot solution, not only for financial services relevant, but basically also for others relevant, but working on the operationals normally with a cost case associated there. And then maybe before I hand over to Martin, just for those who haven't seen it, earlier this summer, or actually this summer in July, we announced that the F10 shares have now been tokenized with SDX and support of also Equitech, which is basically the first time that as shares are tokenized on a CSD, which means a central security depository, and with that basically able to book into the bank accounts, but also maybe we touch on it as well, Martin. I would hand over with that to you and give you also the clicker.
Thank you very much. You mentioned already the highlight that I just wanted to.
Oh, I can explain it, of course.
No. Don't worry, all good. So thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to present and introduce you to the SIX Digital Exchange. Would like to give you like next 10-15 minutes a quick overview of basically who we are, what we do, and why tokenization makes sense from my point of view. And here F10 really plays a very vital and important role because they've been the first company in July that is the kind of world first equity tokenization that took place in a regulated financial market infrastructure. Yeah? But let's start with who we are, and let me come to that slide in a second. So SIX Digital Exchange, we are part of SIX Group, and as you maybe know or aware of, SIX Group runs the Spanish and also the Swiss, and also the Spanish financial market infrastructure, and with roughly 3,500 people. And SIX Digital Exchange is a daughter company of SIX Group with roughly 150 people, just to get an idea about the size of SIX Digital Exchange. At SDX, we started our journey in 2018 from scratch. At that time, there was a greenfield approach where basically what we've done and built up over the last 4 years is an integrated so-called central securities depository and an exchange for digital assets. And with that, for today's topic and main focus is on digital assets in the sense, in the regulated space, digital equities and also digital bonds. I think that's important to understand so we have two main areas, strategic business verticals. One is Web3, cryptocurrency services, staking, non-custodial staking. And for our today's conversation, I'm talking about the regulated space, the digital equities and digital bond space. Yeah? And in order to make you aware of how our setup works and what does it mean to be an integrated distributed ledger, technology-based depository and an exchange for digital assets? And what is the difference between like our model in a regulated space and public DeFi? That's very likely some questions will come around that. And with that, let me give you a quick introduction. What you see here on that slide is, or on the screen, is the light purple part. That's what we've built up over the last 4 years, is a private, peer-to-peer, permission-based network. Private in the sense that we as SIX Digital Exchange run that network. Permission-based in the sense that only financial market infrastructure, financial market participants with the highest regulatory standards can join SIX Digital Exchange. What does it mean? Basically, banks and security trading firms are allowed to join our network, which is this light purple network that you see here. And yes, exactly. And any bank that joins our network runs through a very structured process to get part of our network. And with that, banks basically get DLT ready. And we run our network on R3's Corda, that's the technology, the blockchain behind that, a very specialized provider for financial market industry and service industry. And why do I explain all of that? Because there are two other very important stakeholders, are the issuers on the left-hand side and the investors on the right-hand side. So we decided when we started with SIX Digital Exchange to stay as close with the processes and established roles with market participants as they are used to it already, and go with the established best practices. Yeah? What does it mean? On the left-hand side, you see a corporate, an issuer. It might be your company if you will decide to found and incorporate a Swiss company. Or for those, of course, large corporates that think about issuing debt. So we're talking about equity and bonds. And this issuer still has to select in this process a lead manager, or let's say a bank that is connected to our network. And with that, banks fulfill a very important role, advisory role, market sounding, is it possible to place the security in the market, and so on. Yeah? A point that I want to make here is that issuers cannot come directly to us because, as I said, it's a network, permission-based network where basically banks can join the network. And compared to other DeFi setups and models, it's not possible that issuers get directly to SDX. And then on the other side, the right-hand side, you see the investors as a stakeholder in that whole system and setup. Basically, an investor, same like issuers, cannot directly come to us and onboard. The investor still has a securities account, a cash account with a bank where he is used to do his transactions. Okay? And the process, and coming back to your F10 transaction, is sorry, I need to try to be a bit more focused, just being conscious of time. It's important to understand we started our journey with in November last year when we went live with the first 3 member banks so running in that, taking part in that network, namely UBS, Credit Suisse, and ZKB, so Zurich Cantonal Bank. And in May, we communicated our 4th member, the first EU-based institution that joined our network, and I'm very optimistic and confident that we will communicate new members soon in our network. Yeah? And the goal on our side is within the next 3 years to grow that network to 20 plus members, just to give you an outlook, bring more banks on that side. And with that, my colleague Miriam and I, we are very heavily involved in the process of getting new members on board, yeah, to join our network. And on the other side, we speak quite a lot with corporates and companies about issuing securities, bonds, equities, or at events like today's.
Is this clear? Like, do you have any questions? Because I think it's not that it's not an easy setup. It has quite some complexity. I think key takeaways for me, at least, were that the investors as well as the issuers never have direct access to US SDX. You run the light purple colored base infrastructure based on Corda R3 technology, but both sides basically need to go through a bank to have access to that network and need to be fully regulated.
Exactly. And my point here is, and my understanding is, most of you are obviously not working in a bank, but more on the left-hand side, on the corporate, young startup companies, this ecosystem, is that with this first, so I got stuck a bit, we went live in November last year, but in July this year, and therefore I said, you mentioned already the highlight, the really very major milestone that we went through in July was that we have seen the very first equity tokenization of a company in a regulated financial market infrastructure, and it was F10. And so we're very proud to speak, of course, about this transaction. And in case you consider incorporating a company, or you have already founded a company, I would highly recommend to, of course, speak with F10 about the experience. The advantages, basically the question is what's in for the issuer. I'm still owing you an answer on that. Is with that, as it's the first time that you, go via a bank, they issue your digital, make sure that your company gets, the stocks get digitized. And then when you go on our website and you see main register, you then can find the F10 shares together with an ISIN code. And what does it mean? Shares, privately owned shares, suddenly get bankable. Yeah? So they get an ISIN code. You see your own company in a bank account, in a securities account. And with that, for example, for upcoming next financing rounds or incentivize either employees, old investors, new investors, and so on, suddenly these shares are available in a bank ecosystem. And with there, it's more easy to, much more easier to transfer these shares from one bank node, in that sense, yeah, that you can see here, to another bank. And that's one of the big advantages that you can see, and we'll speak about that later on, of course, if you're interested. But we also work together with ecosystem partners, where young companies that very early recognized such an advantage, and ecosystem to offer share registry services. Yeah? So the question, how to get tokenized, how can I fully digitize the journey with investors, general meetings, and so on, and a lot of services around it and service partners that work with us.
Can I have a question? So what is the differentiation to SDX? There's a lot of startups who say they're going to tokenize my shares, they're going to find investors. There's Daura, for example, who digitizes shares and puts it on a platform. So how is SDX different from that?
So we communicated Daura, for example, as ecosystem partner, also Equitech, who was involved in the F10 transaction. And we also, if you see, go to our communication on the website with Aktionariat. So these are share registry service providers that support companies in their digital journey to get digital services around that. And we, as infrastructure exchange and CSD, and we are talking about privately owned companies and not publicly listed. That's also a very important differentiation that we need to mention. We provide the infrastructure, the CSD, the register, the process to get booked into the register and getting bankable in the banking system. But we do not offer finding investors, for example. So this role is still with the banks, and that's important because a lot of discussion in the market is around this intermediation of banks and what are the functions of banks. A lot of discussion. Banks play a very important and vital role in that system. Advisory, sounding to the market, and so on. And this functionality still lies with banks.
It's just
So what is the base eligibility criteria for a company to be listed as a token in the SDX? Because it's a matter of pride to be listed like that, but now can anyone?
Let me start with the tough one. If you try to speak about bonds and regulated securities on a publicly listed segment, the very high regulatory standards apply as you would list a security in a normal Swiss exchange. Right? Now talking more to your question on the digital securities for equities, for example, the starting the entry hurdles are pretty low, and also the costs, also relative to how you define it, of course. But in relative terms, the amount to get you have to pay in order to get tokenized and get booked into the register are, let's say, low in the sense of that you have very easy access to such a bankable share and bankable ecosystem.
If you say low, can you tell a range?
It really depends on how the fixed costs are. I can't speak about cost because that's typically done via the banks that are in our network and also the share registry services. So I can't speak about their cost, but the requirements to get booked into the register are low in the sense of small, very small. Yeah? One Swiss franc. So any company that is basically set up and paid in the capital is able to join that.
But do they need to have an advisory board or CEOs, or can I be a single person company?
It needs to be an AG, a Swiss AG, and then you are able to go through and look at that process.
So why is not everyone doing it then?
Because we just started. I always compare it like Amazon when they built up their platform, and there was one point in time when they put their first book in the shelf. It was, I don't know, 95, 97. And a lot of banks asked me, why should I do it? What do I see for me and issuers? And yes, we had to start somewhere. So at the moment we built an island, I would say. Yeah, this private network is an island. A lot of discussions are going on how to bridge that to the mainland, so the existing ecosystem outside of this digital, outside of our ecosystem. Because strictly speaking, in our register at the moment, we have one publicly listed bond and one share, so one company. But it's
maybe we change the question a little bit to what is your ideal company to come to you?
Yeah.
Companies like F10, young companies that are starting their journey. I would say, with a bit more forward-looking view, would say think about getting digitized early, being in the ecosystem, and make your shares bankable. So that's basically my view on it. If you want to grow, you have a good way and mean to incentivize colleagues, employees, former owners, new owners, investors, and so on. You have these shares more easily transferable and portable in the banking system.
My question was more for F10. What's the benefit of being tokenized if there is no liquidity behind this vehicle?
I think for us, the motivation was to try everything. Like obviously we walk the talk here a little bit as well. Like we talk to many of our corporate partners, and experiments are there to be taken into the learn. I think it's still very early. It's definitely, for example, in the future, you could, when you have a company that has a value, and as a founder, normally you can't tap into that. I can see a world when I book my ISIN into UBS Credit Suisse Takeaway and this not named EU entity, but then get
CMEquity. You can find it on our website.
So CMEquity. So then I could potentially get a loan against that value, for example, right? That is then a benefit for whoever owns the shares. This is something I can totally see. And then obviously everything transferability. But I still think we need to have the registry somewhere, because not all shares are there now at the moment. So I think it's still a learning process as well.
Can I add to that? Sorry. So, I make the experience as an entrepreneur that banks don't really help you to raise capitals. First of all, they don't like to expose themselves to risk by proposing something to their clients that is not, the investment risk. But the one really important element is that a private banker who suggests an investment to a client has a liquidity outflow. And he's incentivized to have the maximum amount of assets under management, right? He gets his bonus on assets under management. So if you have a banked item, it's not a liquidity outflow. It's because it's banked. So the private banker gets an incentive to consult the client in the way that could be interesting for him and doesn't lose part of this incentive. So it solves different problems, but you don't necessarily have to tokenize to have that, because you can also put a leasing number to publicly, private shares. Banks do that. It's expensive. You can do that with service providers who do that. It's not necessarily the tokenization that makes that possible, but having a leasing is a real benefit.
In addition to that, transparency, because suddenly on our website in the register your ISIN can be seen. Digital, being on the forefront of this digital development is the second one. Please don't underestimate Switzerland, and I guess most of you are aware of that, but in Switzerland and it's out of Europe, you're really in the forefront of this development. There's a very liberal environment and openness to innovation, and this whole DLT blockchain environment ecosystem that developed over the last years in Switzerland. It's amazing to see that, and these are the kind of different bits and pieces that ultimately, if you decide to grow in the future, you're in that bankable this ecosystem, and in case it comes to an IPO, you're already directly in a digital format available. People you get seen and so on. So it's really a journey, and depends on the management and the owners of the company which really want to grow.
Maybe we just, I don't know if you have more slides you want to
more slides, but obviously much too intense and it would take much more time. So depending on your openness and questions, I can.
So maybe we just use the slides as backups when we go into the discussions, and maybe.
Well, can you say which syndicate bank supported you in the issuance?
So in the issuance
on the or did you have a syndicate bank?
I don't know what was this. Did we have a syndicate? Was that with Zuckerberg again?
Issuer, yes, it's issuer.
The
issuer agent, so it was Zuckerberg, right?
Strictly speaking, I can't comment on that. That just we also have to make sure we have to differentiate between Dauer, Equitec, and Actionariat, who are share registry service providers. And then on the other side, you have banks. So the four banks, US, ZKB, Credit Suisse, and CMEquity, they can act as issue agent. That's important to understand. It's always need to be a bank that is connected to our network. And but really happy to, first of all, after this Groundbreak session, reach out to me. I can provide you also with more details, and if you have questions, we are here to answer you and support you.
A quick one on that. So
has to be a bank, or it could be, for example, just a broker dealer, or what is the kind of minimum regulation as a
member?
agent? Yes.
To get member, strictly speaking, the correct answer is it's stated in section 2 of our terms and conditions, and it depends on the license, and that needs to be looked at. And there's a couple of other requirements, but can be generalized either you're a central bank, commercial bank, or a securities trading firm.
The securities trading firm could
So broker dealer
could potentially.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
And then my second question to you as F10 is who's putting the price of the share? Like who's defining the price of the share? Because obviously if you go through the system, you have an easy number, you have to put it in with a certain price.
So the pricing of it, yeah. So
Who
currently,
defines the price of the share?
So currently, I think we are still. I mean, I haven't been very super close recently, like what has been decided in the end. But when I was involved, the idea was that the price, because we are currently not having an active secondary market on it, so we basically stop before what you would say a private banker would just go out and recommend F10 to anyone. And therefore, because also we have transfer restrictions and what we call vinculierung, like first buying, right of first refusal in terms of any transactions. So in that sense, the price is not a publicly like Nestle just traded every day. Right. So what happens on our end? There are two prices relevant. Right. One is the fair market value, and the other one is what is relevant for the taxes. And both. Yeah, both have their reason to exist. One, obviously, you need to book like at the end of the year, and then also there are the agreement with the tax authority on how to price these things. And the other one is basically normally if you have a recent transaction, then that's the best estimate of the fair market value. And then normally the longer this has been weighed, the more you would then deviate from that price. So I think in our case, the ISIN, I'm not sure when, if they even get a publicly visible price at some point. I don't think that will be the case. However, in the bank accounts, there will be a price reflected if we decide to send that price. And I think at the current, my easy understanding would be we would start with the more tax value, just not to confuse anybody, right?
Because then you have a lower tax.
Exactly, because it will be a part of the Sector UBS Credit Suisse bank account. Basically, at the end of the year, you see, hey, this asset is there with value X, and then you don't want the discussion with maybe another document we as F10 normally annually would issue with what are the shares worth from a tax perspective. But it's an interesting, and I think also the discussion will maybe later also go into that direction. Like when does it make sense to have a secondary market? How do you enable a secondary market? Or when is it more, let's say, the infrastructure benefits and having the transferability, having everything on a blockchain and kind of trackability as well, versus really the marketing aspect.
Kind of final comment, and also of course, I think over to you that is be aware it is also what we've built up is a journey. We are on the forefront in Europe and also globally as being the first one to run such a global exchange and depository on DMT. And for us, it's also impossible to make a big bang. We also have all the products listed and traded in marketplace. There are a lot of ideas, of course, circling around. For example, for such private shares, you can think about the marketplace, which is not that kind of publicly traded marketplace. But all of these ideas make sense. But if it makes sense, then we think and prioritize and we'll implement it in the future. So also for us as an infrastructure provider, it's really a journey, a long-term journey to work and develop this digital ecosystem in Switzerland.
So I don't have slides.
Perfect, but maybe Carla, we give you the opportunity, and we just have your title here and your company, and maybe you tell a little bit about Core, what you're doing, and then what's your view on the tokenization at the top.
Well, thanks for having me here today. So I would like to highlight how extraordinary this is, what these two companies have achieved together. My company kind of was established during the ICO craze, and I did an ICO myself. And I don't know who of you is aware, but there were like approximately like 10, 15 ICOs that were happening in Switzerland. There were a lot, but like 10 to 15 like big ones that really make noise. And of these 10, 15s, I think there are 2 companies that are still around. And I mean, these guys have managed, or like 3 maybe, I'm not aware, like I don't have a scientific study, but basically these guys have managed to do, it's not an ICO because it's not an ICO anymore, called an ICO anymore because that has a bad feeling to it, but basically it's a token issuance process that is fully regulated and supported by an infrastructure that is there for a reason, because in the end, the thing around regulated exchanges and banks is to protect investors and to kind of set a good level of quality for the companies to get listed. And so they are here for a reason. So I think it's extraordinary what has been achieved here. And certainly it's like start of the internet, where we would have never thought that we would ever order pizza on the internet, but today we do. So I'm very curious to see where this goes in 5 years.
Long-term journey.
It's going fast. So and I think also SDX had a very long journey to get there. I mean, started in 2015. I know we pivoted quite a lot. So this is really an achievement. So as I said, Core Technologies has been established in the ICO craze. Actually, I co-own several IT companies. I invested in one company that is called Phoenix Systems that is providing data centers here in Switzerland. So we operate 3 geo-redundant data centers based on IBM Linux One infrastructure. So why is this important? These machines are especially relevant for digital assets. And within that company, we started to do first blockchain projects. Among these, also this famous ICO I was involved in. And then you have to know, like, financing data centers is expensive. We had leasing. Our bank at this point said, if you're doing blockchain projects, we're shutting down the banking relationship. So we had some hot moments, and we decided to spin off the blockchain part of the business into a new company, which is called Core Technologies today. Core Technologies basically does infrastructure for tokenizing and storing tokens. And we serve large corporates in this area. So we're not doing ICOs anymore, but let's say the base infrastructure was created out of this. The thing at the time was, we did this ICO in 2017. First companies or service providers in this area were created. And we decided to use all these service providers. And we went there, got quotes, and looked at the tech and said, shit, we have to do it ourselves. There's nothing there. So we had to build everything ourselves. Consequently, today what we can offer is a custody solution to store digital assets, and we have a tokenization engine, including all relevant things around it to tokenize. So when I say we're serving large corporates, you think, there are not many large corporates who tokenize. The funny thing is that we have pivoted a little bit away. So we have like 3 pillars, offering 3 different products. First pillar obviously is tokenizing assets, financial assets. So there we focus a lot, or let's say we have a lot of traction in the area of non-bankable assets, mainly real estate. So we have 4 different companies who are tokenizing real estate. You can do this in 3 different legal ways. And basically we provide the whole infrastructure to onboard an investor, have him KYC'd, AML'd, and so on, to the point where they pay in the money and they receive tokens into a wallet that we create for this investor. And then he holds tokens to either a real estate fund or a real estate company or a real estate bond. We do that for different partners. Obviously, you can also tokenize company shares. But again, so our client would rather be a company incubator who then tokenizes a lot of company shares, a little bit like Actionariat or Daura. But yeah, so we would not tokenize one company because our tech stack is too expensive to do it only for one project. So it's like a software as a service solution where you hit through a lot of tokenization projects. Second pillar is the luxury goods industry. So now you might be a bit frowning like, huh? So it's actually exactly the same tech, but a completely different purpose. For the luxury goods industry, we are tokenizing products, mainly watches today. Our first brand that went live is Vacheron Constantin from the Richemont Group. And basically, you don't tokenize it as a financial asset, you tokenize it and you create a digital representation of the watch that is an authenticity certificate of the piece. Basically, you can imagine it's a little bit like the booklet of your car, where every time you service your car, you get a stamp in, and it's the same for the watch. Every time you do something with this watch, have it revised, repaired, if it's stolen, if it's broken, you put it into the NFT token, and basically you have like a passport for the watch.
And how do I know it's this watch?
There's unique identifiers, and that's special for watches as opposed to other jewelry. So a Vacheron Constantin watch has 4 to 5 different unique identifiers that link, and these unique identifiers are stored in the NFT token. So it's not only a serial number, it can be special measurements of this watch, a special certification of the watch, and so on. And these 5 unique identifiers make it impossible to falsify. So for Richemont, it is a very important tool to act against counterfeits. For collectors, this kind of passport is a way to make the piece more valuable in the long term because you have a full life cycle history. The token itself is already created during the manufacturing process through their SAP system and is transferred to the buyer of the watch at the moment of the purchase. and then if you would sell the watch, you would transfer the tokens. So Richemont has a full custody solution, wallet solution. Every client and user gets a wallet from Core Technologies. But of course, he doesn't see that it's us behind it. It's fully branded, Vacheron Constantin, and so on. So this is.
And the core is based on what chain?
So that's a good question. Large corporates don't want to deal with blockchain. So they don't want to create wallets, they don't want to set gas fees, they don't want to deal with congestions. So we've decided to create our own blockchain that is fully serviced. Basically, you get it as an SLA with a very high, so it's a fully Ethereum compatible blockchain. It's called Dragonfly. And Dragonfly basically has a very high throughput. We can do process up to 200,000 transactions per second, so no congestion. And it's almost sort of the transaction costs are all close to zero because it's a proof of authority blockchain. So you can do, I think, 100,000 transactions for 70 Swiss francs. And also, it is designed in a way that you cannot speculate. The token value will never appreciate. So it doesn't make sense to invest in it as a speculation tool. It's really as a blockchain that is certified, ISO certified. It's operated exclusively on Linux One service, so highly secure. It is, and you can basically book it as a service level agreement. There are today 10 authorities to validate transactions, all Swiss-based. IBM is one of them. Green Data Centers is one of them. Switch is one of them. Maybe you know that company and Stiftung. And so they are validating the transactions, and that might be relevant for SDX because all the validators are known. This blockchain specifically is the only blockchain that is compliant with Swiss DLT law. The Swiss DLT law that was instated last September, that came into force, says that you have to have transaction validated by 3 different, completely independent parties. But the problem is you have to know which parties validated the transaction. So let's say Ethereum, of course, would fulfill criteria 1 because you get validated by many different validators, but you don't know who. And so you can really say, okay, my transactions are only going to be validated by Switch, Green, and IBM, and so you have a transaction that is fully validated in front of law, and you don't need an additional signature, or it's like qualified electronic signature. So it might be relevant when SDX decides to move away from R3.
Next question.
So Dragonfly looks like a layer 1 protocol.
No, it's a layer
Layer
2
two.
because it's completely Ethereum compatible. So if at some point we disappoint you and you think it's a bad solution, you can move to Ethereum.
So can anybody else get access to it? Can we launch our NFTs on it?
Yeah, it's completely public, open source. Just I can send you the links. There's a test net and a mainnet, and I mean you can start tomorrow. It's just that you need tokens to start. So you can start tomorrow on
But you
testnet,
said like it needs to be a
but you
big
would have to
company.
buy tokens from one of the 10 validators.
But also you said it's for big companies and it doesn't make sense for the small. So
No, that's not for the
for
blockchain.
this one it
The
doesn't.
blockchain,
So
like,
NFT minting would be
no
possible.
problem. No problem.
Okay.
So it's just the infrastructure that we operate is quite expensive because hyper secure, and that's why that doesn't make sense for smaller companies because like we're looking at high costs.
And when you say luxury goods, is there a plan to go? And maybe also a question too, right? And you mentioned the non-bankable. We before only talked about bankable goods. Like we could like real estate, watches, obviously cars, whiskey bottles, whiskey past, but not. Right? There's a lot of things that could have value and be tokenized.
Yep.
Like, what are you doing there beyond the watches?
So we're tokenizing real estate. So
real estate. Sorry.
So that would be the most relevant
yeah,
asset class. But I mean, there are plans between our companies, maybe you're not aware, to also see how, for example, if we tokenize a watch, how this could be used as a collateral against a loan, for example. And so there are ideas that we are spinning. It's not yet. You could also find solutions where how can you finance someone to buy a watch and then have the token in escrow until the watch is paid off. So there are many different possibilities that, as I said, it's the beginning, like the beginning of the internet. So we're early.
Just one more question. So
Yeah.
Debbie has been explained this program also explains us to go for the why and the vision and the mission and have these things really clear. And I want to know from your experience and your company's experience, what was your why to create this NFT? Because a Rolex can also be identified with the card that it comes with. So
Yeah.
what was your why?
So to be honest, either you operate bottom up or top down. We did not do this strategic top down thing. Why? And now we're going for Rolex. This happened. Basically, we were in touch with people from Richemont, and they said we're looking to find this. And we said basically it's the same thing. We tokenize a financial asset or a product. We can do it that. And then we went into a consulting mandate for over a year, 1.5, until the solution was really shaped into the way that they really wanted it. We had to understand their requirements, right? And so now we have a finished product that we can roll out to many different luxury brands. But it's not like, so today the why, in retrospective, for the luxury brands, especially if they don't sell it themselves. So, like Vacheron Constantin, for example, only sells in their own stores. I think they have like approximately 200 stores where they don't sell directly, but through the problem is they want to get the contact to the end user, to the end client. And through this solution, they can communicate to the token. If you have a Vacheron Constantin watch and you sell it, Vacheron Constantin doesn't know it until this person shows up in the store. And then they change the register. But through the token, they can always talk to the token. Even if they don't know you own one, they can talk to the token.
Just requires that somebody is listening what the token receives, right?
Exactly.
So you can speak to any chain out there, but if nobody is looking at it.
It can lead to a complete new form of digital marketing also, because
that's their main task. Yeah, that's their main goal. So that's their why.
Can I wear then my digital twin in Decentraland?
So right now, of course, we are not offering this, and it depends on the target audience of the watch brand. But of course, this is an extension to the product. Makes sense.
And can you touch again on you said the blockchain is basically denying valuation increase. So the speculative aspect is very important for this asset class, isn't it? That's why people invest in watches. So how does that work? Or what is the use case?
This is really not about investing in watches.
Yeah.
It's an authenticity certificate that is digital.
Right.
That's all. Instead of having a paper, you have a token. And you can click on that token and generate a paper at all times.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not about having a watch as a financial asset. Not a big.
But if I'm going to sell the watch for 10x,
yeah.
So what's going to happen with the token then?
You transfer the token because the buyer will not buy your watch unless you don't have the token.
So it's value independent, basically.
Completely,
So
completely. Okay. That's a pure NFT.
So the transaction doesn't happen.
Exactly. Basically, if it's your proof of ownership because you have the watch and the token, and it's a proof of authenticity for the watch. But it doesn't have anything to do with financial valuation of the watch.
Okay, I couldn't trade it on a.
No, this one.
Yeah, got it.
You could.
Not independently.
And you can't.
Yeah,
it's in block. I can't transfer my NFT.
Of course you can.
So there is a world where somebody owns the watch, the physical, and somebody has the NFT.
Yeah, but the thing detached from each other will not make a lot of sense because you will know that the watch has an NFT. And
why do you know that?
Because basically when you are basically if I sell you my watch, you will.
Until today I didn't even know this existed, right? So you can sell me your watch, and I wouldn't even ask for it because I don't know.
Yeah, but you want the authenticity certificate.
So I would be happy with whatever card you give me.
Yeah, but then I fake the authenticity certificate.
Everyone who buys such a watch knows that he's
I'm not in the
really
market.
sure they want to sell
it will not make sense to trade it.
Yeah, but it's a problem with the proper NFT, right? Because if I'm selling you the watch and I'm not giving you the NFT with it, I mean, the NFT is practically worthless, right? Because there's no regulation that says if I'm keeping the NFT, the watch is still mine, even though I have given you the watch and you paid me for it.
It's an interesting one. Like if you sell your watch.
There's no data ownership. I mean, that's the problem with NFTs, right? If you're selling me your ape, it's a different one because it's digital. But with the physical goods, it's
the same. You can put on your NFT that represents the watch that has been stolen, and you sell the watch. But the watch becomes unsellable on the secondary market officially because in the NFT it says it has been stolen.
Yeah.
May I interrupt you for a second? I really have a hard stop.
Yes, sorry.
There's a reason for my tie.
I felt honored.
There are also many reasons why I tie today. Please, if you have additional questions, reach out to me, and also Miriam still stays here with you, and really happy to engage with you.
No. Just one question. The story of the ape. It's not a board.
No, it's my tie, it's my suit, and it's
super cool.
it's not an ETH. It's my first, let's see, next step towards the metaverse.
But you minted it.
Myself, yes.
Thank you very much, Marc. We let you on. Maybe we have time for one or two more questions. I think I definitely have one with regards to what are you most excited in the project you're currently working on when it comes to tokenization. What is it that you say, okay, it's the early days of the internet and it's hard to predict the future, but like, what are you excited these days?
I'm excited because I really see traction from large corporates. They are really tapping into this, and also banks. I mean, this has really accelerated now. And I'm so excited because like the last 3 years have been difficult, right? To get the foot into the door with a blockchain project as a blockchain company, that was like, getting a bank account was a huge challenge, and keeping a bank account was a huge challenge. I hear from many blockchain companies that still get their bank accounts closed. So if I hear from him that there are Credit Suisse, UBS, and ZKB joining this network to tokenize company shares, I'm like in heaven. This is huge.
So basically attraction, and in terms of use cases, in terms of what we should be excited for as users?
I think it will be in the future. It will definitely be that our valuables will all have a digital representation. So you will have on your mobile phone, you will have a token for your laptop, for your watch, for your car, for your, I don't know. And I mean, if you want to brag, you can just hold up your phone and say, look, that's my valuables. But essentially you can manage your valuables also through your, at least imagine, I mean, I don't know how it is for you, but today I have a folder with all the receipts of the expensive things I own. If I have an insurance case, I have to like dig deep and find and say, oh, I have one. In the future, probably you can just pin the token, say it was lost, refund insurance.
So when will
Cool.
I be able to link my digital wallet to Tinder to show off all my cars? Other questions?
Yeah, actually, do you see any silver lining when you could, use this type of scenario to actually, enter speculative areas that are more in terms of, I don't know, pension fund investments to tokenize that? That has a slight hint of speculation as well, so that's why I'm not mentioning social.
So we made already a huge step with pension funds that they're allowed to invest 1% into alternative assets.
Right.
I don't think that a pension fund will invest into a tokenized asset for the next at least 10 to 15 years.
Yes, but you are discussing this with me right now, so there is a slight hope.
So, I just want to say, like, there are already possibilities to. I mean, there are already art funds or timepiece funds or like old classic car funds where you can invest into the fund, and the fund buys and sells watches that appreciate in time, and it is a pure investment vehicle. That already exists. It's just not tokenized yet. But there are companies who start to tokenize these. Tokenizing a fund makes sense. It's a possibility. Normally, if you want to invest in a fund, you have a minimum invest of 10, 50, 100K. And if you tokenize it, you could bring that down because the administration is less cumbersome and so on. And you could reach out or make this asset class more accessible to retail investors. We're not there yet, but this is one of the things that we are addressing with the tokenization engine that we have created. Obviously, private equity funds, real estate funds, funds in any kind of shape and form are prone to be tokenized. Yes.
Right.
And so the question in the end is always, what's the benefit of tokenizing a fund? And the benefit of tokenizing a fund is that within the ecosystem of the fund investors, if you invest in a fund, it's always difficult to get out. Right? You always read the fine print how to get out, right? So it's important. It's always difficult to get out. There's some kind of like setting the price, and then it takes 1 month, 2 months to get out, and so on. If you create a fund and you have KYC whitelisted investors inside that fund and you tokenize it, you can allow the investors into this fund to trade amongst each other. So if you want to get out of the fund, you can just sell it to other fund investors. And this would create more liquidity inside the fund. That could be a relevant benefit of tokenizing it. But of course, you would not want to trade tokens of a fund publicly because you need to see who is. You need to do your regulatory and compliance stuff. So.
It's the same with Actionariat, right? After a certain threshold, it's $1,000 or something, they need to do KYC on this Ethereum wallet, MetaMask coming in and buying on the secondary, whatever listed.
They need to whitelist it. Yeah.
But now you can, up to a limit, you can do it. But yeah, definitely very interesting. I'd like to stop here right on time. Thank you online. I don't know if you had any online questions, Shoaib, before we leave you off. Jumping off. Thanks for joining. I think we leave you with this. Then basically the next one is coming up in October. And it's about, what is it? Data integration and data management.
Very sexy topic. But the company's cool.
Sexy, but
it's with one of our alumni.
Exactly.
Yeah.
With,
companies.
Busy. Very relevant on how to connect everything, APIs, enabling all our information, the data flowing, and they are definitely supporting that. Thanks a lot for coming in. There is food Stay around, network. The house is open. Stay here. There's beer for the adventurous one, and say hi to everyone. Thanks a lot.